Hello, everyone, and welcome to Virtual Preview. Our session today is focusing on the first year engineering process. My name is Derek Williams, as I've indicated a little bit earlier, and I think you're going to enjoy this session a lot. Now, we want this session to be interactive, so we'll start off a little lecturish, but I want you to be prepared to turn on your cameras and enjoy this interactive session. Let's move on. First of all, let's take a look at the first, our naming convention. I'd like for you to just go ahead and right click your name and where those three dots are. If you are a student, put S hyphen last name, first name. If you're a parent, put P hyphen last name, first name. If you're a Purdue student, put P instead of S, P hyphen last name, first name. We may go back and repeat that a little later because we know folks will still be joining us. We are so happy to have everyone today. If we'll go ahead and move forward, just look at the agenda. Just some housekeeping items that we'd like to talk about first. Then we'll meet our guests. Which first of all, we'll have Jeff Myers, who's a senior advisor with first year engineering, and then we have also a student perspective. You'll get an opportunity to meet four of our students. And now for our housekeeping items. Vivek, you can go ahead and forward. Um, uh, Before we introduce Jeff, we just want you to know that we are recording this session. Also, we'd like for you to know that this session will last probably about an hour and 15, something like that. Of course, you can leave at any time. Um, in this session, it's um, it's going to be interactive, as I said. So make sure that when your mic is usually off, but when it's time to talk, that you turn your mic on. We'll of course remind you. Um, we'll go ahead and move forward at this time. I'd like to introduce Senior Academic Advisor Jeff Meyer. Jeff Myers is on staff with us and has a wealth of information. And so he'll be a great resource, not only today, but in the future. So we wanted to start so that you could meet a senior academic advisor. Of course, he's senior, not just an academic advisor, but I think he'll have some good information for you. So at this time, with no further ado, Jeff Myers.
Thank you, Derek. So just a little bit about myself, like Derek said, and like you can see right here, my name's Jeff Myers. I am one of the three senior academic advisors in the first year engineering program. I've been here in the first year engineering program since January 2013, so just past 8 years for me. So things I'm going to cover today, I'm going to have some notes. So let me navigate to those. Some of the things that I'm going to cover today are just like a broad overview of really what the first year engineering program is, transition to major, things like that. So I'm going to try to keep it a little short, maybe about 15 minutes or so, leaving time for questions if you have any. So just to start with, really, what is the first year engineering program? First year engineering, in short, is the entry point for every student at Purdue who wants to study engineering. So anybody, whether they're a new beginner or whether they're at Purdue and wanting to come into engineering, they're all going to come through the first year engineering program. The benefit of being in first year engineering is that first year engineering has a common set of classes. So there are about 9 classes, and there's some give and take. We'll kind of discuss that here in just a little bit. But there are about 9 classes that every single student will take through the first year engineering program, and then after those, they will transition into their major. The benefit of this is, like I said, common set of classes. So it doesn't matter if you want mechanical engineering, aeronautical engineering, you're all going to be taking the same classes for that first year. And then you'll go into that professional school and start taking those classes. So this provides for a lot of flexibility. You may, and I have no doubt that the vast majority of you want mechanical engineering or aeronautical engineering, the big, really competitive schools. So the benefit of this is if you were to go to another university where they don't have a first year program, you might actually be taking ME classes right off. But then later on, you decide to switch your mind into chemical or aero or whatever the case is. You might actually have to go back and retake some classes during that what was a first year in order to kind of make up that work. In first year, there is no such thing. Everything is exactly the same. The another benefit of first year engineering is that you are going to be taking engineering 131 or a variation thereof. This class is going to allow you time to actually explore the different majors. That's the major component of this one class's major exploration. There will be some of these engineering concepts that are covered, but it's mostly career exploration, and you'll have a variety of different activities revolving around that. One of those is going to be your engineering your majors, where you actually have to go, as long as everything dies down COVID-wise, and we're back to normal, you actually go to these presentations or watch them through Zoom, get more information about those different programs. The next question that Derek asked me was how to be successful here at Purdue, but in first year engineering. And my first response is going to be biased, but meet with your advisor at least 2 or 3 times a semester. So obviously I'm an academic advisor, so there's bias in there. But one of those meetings is going to be required by Purdue. You have to meet with your advisor at least once a semester to actually talk about classes, get those class recommendations. But it's good to have multiple meetings. That way your advisor actually knows what's going on with you, because we as advisors, we don't get any grade reports or anything like that. So we don't know how well you're doing in those classes. And if there's any issues, we can try to cut those off at the pass before they really snowball. But aside from just classes, there are other things that you can discuss with your advisor, like study abroad, if you want to do a co-op or internship, things like that, where we can start to discuss that process, and then we can refer you to the main organization who controls those. Also, very important from my standpoint is meeting with your professor, or if you don't meet with your professor, at least have some sort of communication with your professor all the time. It shows that you're interested in the material, and obviously can clear up any difficulties that you might be having with the material. That's why the professor is there, obviously, to help you, to make sure that you know this material. So go to your professor's office hours. It's actually striking how many students are nervous about going to speak with their professor. You should not be nervous whatsoever about speaking with them. That's why they're there. So definitely go to their office hours, speak with them, whichever way, but have that constant communication. That is going to be so beneficial. Aside from your advisor, your professors, Purdue has a tremendous amount of resources available to you. We have tutoring. There is the Minority and Engineering program has a great tutoring office right across from our office. I refer my students there all the time. Women in Engineering also has a great tutoring resource. They usually do theirs in the evening. Cosine, which is science tutoring. Tau Beta Pi, which is engineering tutoring. Physics help room, math help room, biology help room, and these are all free, provided to you by Purdue. So definitely use those. Don't feel the need to pick up a tutor, using your own money for that. Use the free resources that are here at Purdue, and these are all vetted tutors. They know they know the material, they've been vetted, they're good and qualified. So use those over somebody else where you actually have to pay for that. Let's see. We also have supplemental instruction. The benefit of this is, don't think of this as tutoring. If you don't understand the material, you should probably go and find those tutoring resources. But supplemental instruction is simply extra practice at the material, and it is proven beneficial. If you go at least 8 times a semester for any given class, you have like a 70% chance of getting at least a B in the class. So success rate is very high. Not every single class offers supplemental instruction, SI. But most of your beginning level classes in first year, and then in some of the majors, they are going to have supplemental instruction as well. So definitely use that extra practice. We also have the Academic Success Program, ASP, which controls SI. You'll notice a trend there. There's a lot of acronyms. Purdue loves acronyms. The Academic Success Program, as I said, controls SI, but you can also obtain not a tutor, a mentor there. If you want to have somebody that kind of assists you, another student that kind of assists you, helping with study habits and time management, that's what those mentors are for. And then lastly, We have the Center for Career Opportunities, CCO. It's a great resource if you're wanting, you know that you want to become a mechanical engineer, don't know exactly what a mechanical engineer can do. You can go to the ME website, but you can also go to CCO and it'll have job descriptions there. It'll have salaries. There's even a link on their website where it takes you to another website where you can put in that, maybe you want to go to Boise, Idaho. You can see what the salary rate is like there for a mechanical engineer. So definitely use that. Another great component of CCO is they have this My CCO portal where you can actually upload your resume and they will critique it, give you any sort of feedback that may be necessary. This is very important when you go to the Industrial Roundtable in September. If you know anything about Industrial Roundtable, this is where students try to get jobs, internships, co-ops, things like that. There's something very similar to that in February as well. As a student, as a incoming freshman student, you should still go to this. Obviously, don't expect to get any one of those because you've only been on campus for like 5 weeks, but use that as a learning experience. Have that resume printed out after you submitted it to CCO. Have that resume printed out. Give that resume to all of those prospective employers. Ask them questions. What are they looking for in a mechanical engineer? Anything like that. So the main idea here is to network with them. And lastly, how to be successful is to become involved. There are a lot of not study groups. There are a lot of clubs and organizations and things like that at Purdue. So that can help as well, networking and brushing up on some of these perhaps leadership skills. So all of that can be helpful. Now, if I can, what I'd like to do now is share my screen, then I'm going to navigate to the Purdue website and kind of go over our plan of study. Let's see. So hopefully everybody can kind of see that. Just going over our plan of study briefly. And if you're curious where any of this information is, it is on the first year engineering webpage. Let's see, there are different links over here on the side. If you have any questions, definitely feel free to look through all of these links. And then the next one, if you go to enrollment management policy, if you type that into Purdue, you can find my second link as well. But requirements for first year. As you may or may not have heard, there are essentially 9 requirements, 9 class requirements in first year. If you look at this webpage, and I'm jumping ahead just a little bit, it shows that there are 8. Well, the reason why it shows 8 is because A and B, they're 2 separate requirements, but it puts them together under category 8. So think of it really as 9 class requirements. So to start off with, once again, these are all of the common set of classes that every first year student will take. There is a slight variation in some of these. To start off with, almost every single student is going to take a 2-class engineering sequence. That is probably going to be Engineering 131, that's that career exploration class that I mentioned before. And then you'll finish it up with Engineering 132 in the spring semester. 132 is very little career exploration, a lot of engineering concepts. That's where you're really going to hit it. These other options up here, most of these are not going to apply to many students. For instance, Engineering 141, 161, 142, 162. These are going to be for engineering honors students. Now, I'm not an engineering honors advisor. I work with non-engineering students, or non-honors engineering students. So none of my students actually take this set of classes right here. If anybody is going to be in the EPICS learning community, which is by far the most popular learning community, you'll actually take a different sequence. You'll start off with Engineering 133 in the fall semester, very similar to 132, but you're just going to take it in the fall. And then you also take EPICS 111 in the fall semester with it, so you'll take 3 credit hours in total, and then you'll finish it up with this EPICS 121 class. A lot of students really enjoy that EPICS learning community. You do get a lot of hands-on experience in these EPICS classes, so it's different than that Engineering 131. You'll still get that career exploration aspect, but it's going to have a little bit more of that hands-on in these classes. And this is something EPICS, this is something that you can do later on as well, not part of that learning community. Moving down, We have the Math 161 and 165. If anybody has or is going to take, whatever the case may be, Calculus AB, you would need a 4 or 5 on Calculus AB to yield any sort of credit for Calculus 1. As far as curriculum, there is no real difference in curriculum. Now, how they're taught, yes, there can be a difference in that aspect. Curriculum-wise, there is no difference. I hear this quite often that students say there is a difference. There is not. The reason why we can say there is no difference in curriculum is because students can take Math 161, but then break the sequence and take 166. If the curriculums were different, you would not be able to do that. But in any case, 161, 5 credits, 165, 4 credit hours. Moving down to Calculus 2, basically the same thing as 161. And I did skip over. 161 is designed for students that have not had as much experience with Calculus 1. If you've had significant experience and you want to do 161, that's fine. But it's designed for students that have not had as much experience. And so there's a little bit extra assistance there if the student needs it. This last class here, Math 173, it's an option. Obviously, that's why it's listed here. I haven't recommended this class in probably 7 years. It is advanced calculus 2. You might see this from like honor students, but like I said, I haven't recommended it in about 7 years. There's really no need for a student to do this. 62 or 66 is perfectly fine. The next class, every student needs to have General Chemistry 1. If you take the Chemistry AP exam, a 4 or 5 will yield credit for this. If you have a 3 on the AP exam, you would get credit for Chemistry 111. That by itself will not work for first year. You would need to take Chemistry 112, which usually it's just a spring only class. So you would have Chemistry 111, you take Chemistry 112 together. We will use those two in place of 115. That being said, I expect probably 99% of my students, if they do have a 3 on chemistry and they bring in 111 credit, 99% of my students would just ignore Chemistry 111 and opt to take Chemistry 115. The reason, you have to take one more chemistry class regardless, whether it's 115 or 112. So they just take the preferred chemistry class. And in some cases, it might actually be necessary if you want to go into like chemical engineering or environmental or something like that. There's a better class to take later on that will require Chemistry 115. Physics 172, this one, if you have any APs, this is going to be Physics C Mechanics, and this does require a 5. All physics require 5. This class itself is called Modern Mechanics here at Purdue. It can be difficult for many students. I would say some of the more difficult classes in first year is going to be Calculus 2, Physics 172, and then jumping ahead, CS 159. This engineering sequence right here, I've already kind of touched on it above, but once again, first year non-engineering honors, students will not take those classes. It's strictly going to be Physics 172. As far as your science selective, this is real, things will really change depending on which school you go into. So you would want to have a good conversation with your advisor. Where exactly do I want to go? Do I want to go chemical, maybe backup of mechanical, or aero backup of industrial, something like that. I'd say about half the schools want Chemistry 116. The other half of the schools want CS 159. There are 3 that don't really care what your science selective is. Any one of these classes here is going to be fine. Now, these biology classes down here, starting from letter C down to letter G, rarely does a student take any of those classes. I don't think I've ever had a student do biology 121, 135, 131. As far as biology 110, I would say out of 200 students every year, I might have 2 that actually take it. Most of the time we're focusing, like I said, on Chemistry 116, which requires 115. That's kind of the reason I touched on that before. And then CS 159. So places like aero, industrial, nuclear engineering, not environmental, electrical engineering, computer engineering, places like that are really going to want you to have CS 159 as your science selective. Other places, chemical, biological, biomedical, environmental engineering, materials engineering, places like that will really want you to have Chemistry 116. Biology, biological engineering, and biomedical engineering, they actually want you to have both chemistry and CS, not necessarily while in first year. And then finishing up with the courses anyway. Letter C and letter D, unless you are an international student, you are not going to take those classes. Those are strictly for international students. Everybody else is going to take one class from written communication and one class from oral communication. So written communication is typically going to be an English class. For AP, it's language and composition. You have to have a 4 or a 5, but there are other classes to take. There are about 6 in total. As far as oral communication, this can be COM 114 or EDPS 315. There are about 3 classes students can take there, COM being the most notable out of those, a speech class. Just finishing up real briefly, I don't want to go into all of this right here because it doesn't matter at this point, but to complete first year, in addition to those 9 classes, you do have to have a C- in those 9 classes and at least a 2.0 GPA EAI, which is fine if you don't know what an EAI is. That's just these 9 classes up here. And then 30 credit hours. Finishing up with the last question that Derek provided me was transition to major considerations. So we're looking way down the road here, but it's first and foremost many times on students' minds. How do I get into my professional school? Well, students many times will ask me, what does it take to get in? I can't answer that exactly because every year it is different. It depends on how many students want this program and how much space does this program have. That being said, the college has developed this enrollment management policy. And what this is, keep in mind, like I said, it is a College of Engineering policy that if you students meet every single one of these requirements here, you are guaranteed first choice acceptance. And then that little asterisk down at the bottom says, regardless of space availability. So this is what you should really be trying to get during your whole year during first year. So the big one for you as far as GPA and EAI is a 3.2 GPA EAI. So you heard me previously say that you need a 2.0 to complete first year. Once again, to be part of this college guarantee, it has to be a 3.2. So everything else here that can be discussed in your advising meetings with your advisor. But like I said, the big one, GPA considerations for students, this is at least a 3.2. If you don't meet these requirements to be eligible for this college policy, then essentially anything can be used to determine acceptance denial into a professional school. Now, the big schools where it is important to really try to meet this college policy is going to be aeronautical engineering, mechanical engineering, biomedical engineering, to a certain extent, biological, maybe chemical. But really the big 3 that I mentioned at the beginning, those are by far the most competitive schools. So it's really helpful if you can have this college policy. The other schools have not historically been at capacity. That doesn't mean that you're guaranteed in if you don't meet these requirements, but historically they have not been at capacity. So as long as you meet first year requirements, keep your GPA pretty high, you have a decent chance. But like I said, essentially if you don't meet the policy, anything can be used to determine acceptance or denial into any given school. So that's essentially all I have. I know I flew right through that. Let me stop sharing my screen. I flew right through that, but I wanted to leave time for any questions that you may have.
It is a lot of material.
It is.
It is. So I don't know how long, Jeff, you'll be able to stay with us. I know that the students plan to elaborate, based on their experiences in first year. So they'll be in some ways repeating some of the things that you say, or just giving it to their spin on their perspective.
And I do see a couple of messages have popped up here, so I can address those. So first question is, if a student has a 5 in AP Calc BC, would they take 166 or 166 or Math 173? A student can actually, if they have BC, they get credit for Calculus 1 and 2, so they could essentially take Calculus 3 if they wanted to do that. If the student wants to take Calculus 2 here at Purdue for the experience, which, that's always a good idea as well. Not that you have to, but that always is helpful as well. If a student wants to take Calculus 2, then they can either do 162 or 166. It doesn't really matter. But to your question, if they have BC credit, they could actually go into Calculus 3. The second question, I'm noticing not a whole lot of discussion of IE. Is it a less popular program? I wouldn't say it's less popular. I would say it's less competitive. Why are we seeing this huge jump in competitiveness in aero, mechanical engineering, especially? Look at everything that's going on with NASA and SpaceX. There's this huge push to go to Mars. Within the last couple of weeks, three probes have been sent to Mars. There's all this talk about going to space again, going back to the moon. So that is what's really driving this push in aeronautical and mechanical engineering. 15, 20 years ago, civil engineering was one of the more competitive schools. So I wouldn't say it's less popular, it's just not as competitive. It's still one of the top programs in the country. And I would say it's still fairly popular. Out of the schools that really students have an interest in, besides mechanical aero, ECE is a very popular one. Industrial engineering probably is hovering right around that ECE. When should we submit our AP scores so we can determine what classes we need to take? Submit those as soon as possible. The more information that your advisor has when you first meet with him, her, the better. That way they can give you a better and more accurate idea about what classes you should be taking the spring semester. And there's not a need to go back and make changes later. So if you have AP from a year or two ago and those have already been published and everything, try to get those submitted and posted to your Purdue transcript. When it comes to any APs that you're taking your senior year, we do realize that those are not going to be out until right around like July 5th, July 7th. So for those, we try to actually predict, we have you predict what the scores are going to be, and hopefully those predictions are accurate, else we'll need to make course changes for the fall semester. When do you have to choose the FYE path? If I'm understanding the question correctly, like when you're applying to Purdue, there's not really a way to state or apply to mechanical engineering because every student has to go through first year engineering. So I guess that's about the best answer that I can give you at this time. Let's see. Yes, and I know somebody else posted send your scores even if they don't transfer. Your class status will be bumped up and it can help in registration. Yes, so this can help with like summer registration as we're going through right now. During the academic semesters, Purdue is doing course registration, which means everybody just submits everything and the university builds you a schedule. For the summer, yeah, that's absolutely when it can help with that. We actually just ended summer registration already, and that was broken down into like sophomores and juniors and freshmen and stuff like that. So it can change the time, absolutely.
This is great. If you can stick around, we would certainly appreciate it. I'd like to introduce our 4 students. And so Jeff has just laid out the rules and that you'll be living by as a FYE student. Now we're going to take this from the perspective of students who lived it. Okay, so if we would, Vivek, if you would bring the PowerPoint back up, we want to have the students introduce themselves. The first student to speak today is going to be Shay, and Shay's an ME, but we'll let him. I don't want to steal his thunder. So Shay, if you would introduce yourself.
Hi everyone. My name is Shea Akinwumi. I am a sophomore in mechanical engineering. Things I'm supposed to tell along with that, but I have a minor in global engineering studies and an entrepreneurship certificate. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Okay, Abby.
Hi, I'm Abby. I'm a freshman in first year engineering, and I plan to pursue mechanical engineering. And I'm actually going to through the transition to major process. So, if you have any questions about that, I can answer them as well.
That's good. That's good. Wyatt?
Hi, my name is Wyatt. I'm currently a sophomore in chemical engineering.
Great. Great. Where are you from?
Oh, sorry, I'm from Shawnee, Oklahoma, so I'm out of state.
Excellent. Excellent. So, we at this point, I would like for us to turn our cameras on and just briefly go through and find out who's here. So I see iPhone JT, um, Leo. I'm going to have you guys introduce yourself. Just tell us where you're from and your interests. iPhone JT, can you tell us who you are?
Hi, yeah, my name is Jose.
Okay.
I'm from San Diego, California, and I'm hoping to be in the aeronautical engineering program.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Moving on to Leo.
Hi, my name is Leo Gijan, and I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I'm also interested in the aeronautical aerospace engineering program in Purdue.
Great. Great. Moving on. Naomi.
Hi there. My name's Naomi, and I am a non-traditional student, looking to return to engineering after about 10 years, actually. And I'm from Bloomington, Indiana right now.
Great. Jacob.
My name is JC from Illinois. I'm interested in mechanical engineering.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Cameron.
Hi, I'm Cameron Davis. I live in Tallahassee, Florida, and I'm interested in mechanical engineering.
All right. And Monique.
Hi, my name is Monique. I'm from Bowie, Maryland, and I'm interested in mechanical engineering.
Excellent. Okay, Vivek, let's go ahead and fast forward our move our PowerPoint up. So we're going to start a discussion first, and of course, we want you guys to join in. So we're going to start off talking about the transition from high school. There's quite the transition, and very often you don't know what you don't know. So I'm going to have what we provided our students here are subjects. So we've got your class schedule, we've got the subject AP and credit, and these are all things that they wanted to talk to you about. So I'm going to let them pick subjects that they want, but I'm going to start off with the class schedule. So what are some things that you guys wanted to share with the students about forming and making sure you get the right class schedule?
I guess I'll start off. Your class schedule, like you said, your advisor kind of talked about it a little bit. So like they'll give you like a standard curriculum for FYE, and in general, some tips is like go on like the FYE website that you showed earlier, download the schedules, and just you're basically in charge of like your own schedule. So they'll give you like a prototype schedule, and some stuff might work for you, some stuff might not. So it's up to you to like kind of like look into that a little bit and see if you want to like switch some stuff around, and like make sure you do your research, like ask people, like ask upperclassmen what worked for them and what didn't, just to see like how that transfers over to you. Because the advisor, I have a lot of work. So like at the end of the day, you have to like be able to like switch some stuff around a little bit, because in the future you might realize that like you should have taken this class, or you have to take this class, or like other things that goes into like the process, and then like you realize that like, oh, I should have done this, but just because you didn't take like the few minutes or a few like seconds to like just look it up, you wouldn't learn. So like it might like cause some obstacles later on.
That's great. Anyone want to add anything else?
I think another piece of advice is I know you might have taken, 7, I don't know, 8, like a lot of classes in high school and had time to like, do sports and everything else. But if you're going to Purdue, you want to like keep your credit load like around 14, at least when you're a freshman, just to understand like what you can tolerate and what you can't tolerate. And keep in mind that if you're retaking a class, it's going to be easier than like taking a class, like a completely new class at Purdue. So like just definitely keep that in mind when you're like, you're adding classes to your schedule, because 17 credit hours is a lot more than just 14 credit hours.
Great. Anyone else?
I believe you do have the opportunity to move your classes around to certain different times and different days, as long as they're like they don't interfere with each other. And so I know probably a lot of you guys are used to, at least before COVID, getting up super early for school. And so you can really adjust your schedule to what time of day you like to do your work. So I would recommend doing that if you have the chance to. I know personally I have a couple 7:30s, and they're not, honestly, you think you're gonna get up for them, but sometimes you don't. So I would definitely recommend to arrange it however you like.
Okay. Also, someone mentioned yesterday getting a bad schedule. Is this have we already talked about that? Or is there some things that
Uh,
students need to watch out for?
I would add, so I guess I'm 2 years older than the other panelists on this panel. Um, and so when I was a freshman, we had our own schedule, which is why I mentioned that AP thing. I did not know that it changed like that. So we used to be able to make our own schedule. You would fight for the time window and you would go make it like during the middle of class or something like that. But I would say like one of the biggest things about the schedule, it's like a bad schedule sometimes can be good. It just depends. Like I would just say like you have to learn how to deal with what you have sometimes. And don't be so caught up on like dropping a class because like it's not at a time that you don't want to take it. Now, if it's like English, they usually have like attendance policy. So if it's at 7:30 in the morning, you might fail it anyway. So you might want to drop that if that's like the situation where they do have those things. But like maybe if it's math or something like that, where you could catch up if you miss a day or you sleep in or something like that, I wouldn't suggest necessarily dropping it because it's like, oh crap, that's at 7:30. Because at least for me, like I'm in like civil/construction. So like that is one of those things where we have like one class per section. So whatever it is whatever it is. And so there is no moving stuff around when you get towards like the end. So like for me, I'm a senior, I'm graduating this semester. I have a 7:30 required to graduate. Senior design is at 7:30 in the morning. I did not want to. I did not want to pick that. I did not. I would have never chose to do that. But I've had to do that before, so I feel like it's one of those things. Like once you learn how to do it and you learn how to overcome it, a bad schedule can work out for your good because you won't eight semesters. You won't have a good schedule every single semester. So
That's great. Anyone else want to add anything? Okay. Um, how is, and this is a general question, but I know you guys talked about this. How is it, how is college fundamentally different in terms of how you have had to make adjustments? What kind of adjustments fundamentally did you have to make from high school? What were the fundamental changes you had to make? Maybe it was just inside your head. What were the big changes that had to happen? Ways you had to adapt once you came to college?
Okay, for me, in terms of like, I guess wanting to get help, it wasn't that much of an issue for me to like ask for help during like office hours and like talk to my teachers. But one thing that is really important is like, I know that a lot of times in high school, a lot of stuff is just like given to you, like in terms of like, I guess, extracurricular activities and stuff like that. Like it's built into your schedule. But when you're in college, you have to like specifically go out and look for those opportunities and talk to people and find like what you like and actually try it out and like figure out how you're going to like, I guess, prioritize like your favorite activities outside of like your academics, because it's both very important for you to like diversify a network, but it's also important to make sure that you can focus on your academics as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Yesterday, someone, when we were talking about this, someone said there are things that are not readily observable to a freshman. What kinds of things are not readily observable to a
um
freshman?
so I would say like, so one of the big things that I think like as a senior now, So like you learn, obviously you learn more each semester. And so like one of the big things like when you look back is like you don't realize how important like time management is, or like what these things look like. And so you may think you have it under control, and then you may not. And so like the things that you don't see like as a freshman is like one of the big things is like you haven't seen multiple semesters, right? So like if you're in your first semester, you've never done this before. So if you're getting the grades, it's working, great, it's working, right? The second semester, you may be totally different. And so it may not work. And so you haven't seen that yet. And so you won't know how to kind of tweak things or fix things until you kind of get into a rhythm of something like that. And so like I would say one of my worst, so most people would say like, oh, like your first two semesters are usually like either your two best semesters, like your two worst semesters. I had like a really bad semester and a really good semester, and then I had a good semester and I had another good semester. And then I had another good semester. I took a semester off to do an internship. And then that fall when I came back, the next semester, my junior year, was the worst semester ever. So it's like you would think that like by the third year that you have had this game figured out, and it's not. And so like it I think that's like one of the things you don't realize. Like you can never be too set and like I have this under control. You always have to like learn to adapt and like be flexible with like your schedule and like what you're doing and how are you doing things, because that's like going to be super important as you continue to grow. And then obviously in your professional life it's going to be the same. Like no days are going to be the same. So
Thank you. Anyone else? Another thing you guys mentioned was AP credit and credit by examination, that there's some considerations related to AP credit and credit by examination. What do you want them to know?
I guess one piece of advice is that like for those of you who did like who might test in a Calc 2 at Purdue, it might be best to go ahead and take Calc 1 anyways, because Calc 2 is very difficult, especially at Purdue. And just in general, the math classes, especially the math exams, are pretty difficult because they're pretty short. So if you miss one question, then you already like are knocked down to like an 80. So from there, it's very hard to like make sure you get all 12 questions correctly done. And then but if you are like really confident in like your ability, I know that for me, I like tested out of 115 and 116, but they kept trying to encourage me to take 115. So I took it anyways for like a GPA boost. But if you feel like personally really confident about like your ability in whatever AP exam you took and you got like a 4 or 5, and you're still not sure if you should just go ahead and take the next level, go ahead and try and go to like Purdue's like website. They have this like credit by examination and like AP like exam website, and you can go because Purdue does have the option to take like a credit by exam like exams at Purdue, so you can test out of like Purdue's and get credit from Purdue by taking an exam. So if you think you're confident enough in this AP exam like topic, then you can go and take Purdue's like practice exams for their credit by examination stuff. And if you do well on that, then you don't need to take the class and you can just, take a different class.
Thank you. Thank you. So now, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna try to tie some of these together. So like tying together the AP credits and then like your plan of study. So like one of the big things like I think is important. So like Wyatt touched on something that's like important, which is like testing like what class do you take, right? And you don't know until it's too late, to be honest with you. So like I was like, oh, like I should do well in Calc 1. I got a 4 on the one for like Calc 1. They told me to take Calc 1, took Calc 1 and got a C. I was like, wow, shouldn't have did that, because then the next semester I got an A minus in Calc 2. I was like, that's like backwards for most people, right? So how I would have taken the credit, I don't know what it would have been like, but so like you don't necessarily know until sometimes it's too late. But you can always retake a class too. So don't think that it's like, oh, you can. I just didn't want to retake a class, so so I was very comfortable with where it was at. So I was like, I'm not retaking it. But I think the biggest thing is like when you want to do things like that, like where you may test out of something or you may drop something off because of your AP test or something like that, be strategic about it. So like I knew for me, like I transferred a lot of credits in, but also I ended up taking a semester off. And so like that, while it didn't I didn't see the benefits in the short term. In the long term, I'm still graduating with like my class, even though I was only here for 7 semesters. And so with me transferring those credits in and kind of figuring out what I could do, that may help a little bit more. Or like I have friends who do study abroad where they just do gen eds and no technical classes, because sometimes tech classes abroad are a lot harder. Like I know a lot of people who maybe struggle a little bit more and you don't enjoy your study abroad experience because you're struggling in a technical class abroad. So if you have the ability to be flexible with those things, and take more general classes abroad, or just fun classes that may count as like technical electives that you need for your major, that sometimes is a lot better for you. And like you also can do like more tailored study abroad. So like I know like there's usually like some like programs like where a faculty will like lead a program and you'll get like some 6 credits or something, like, and it's something small versus trying to take a whole semester abroad. But that will also help you with graduation too. So you kind of have to understand like where you can apply these things and how you can start moving things around once space starts opening up. And so how you can fill those with other things that maybe are more beneficial to you throughout your college career, because no two people's plan of study is typically the same. So I think that it's good to understand what the rules are for the plan of study and how you can use those rules and like use them to your benefit to do what you want to do. If it's co-op, internship, or study abroad, whatever that looks like. So I would suggest that.
Yeah, and also to go based off like what Russell said, you can like you said, it took 7 semesters. Like my current plan also is to like be here for 7 semesters. So like trying to find loopholes in like the system so you can like find what works for you. Like essentially for me, my gen eds, I only have to take one class because like I knew a language, so I knew French. So I came in, tested out like 3 French classes, and I only have to take one. And like the ME department took that. So like actually fully reading your plan of study and like finding like classes that you can like work your way around, because like your advisor, like as much as like they're employed by Purdue, they won't take that much time into like looking specifically for you. Like I said earlier, they already have like a rubric set out for each student and like the classes that they want everyone to take. So like making sure like you actually take the time to do stuff yourself, and like it's no knock on them, but at the same time it's like it's still your college experience and your education, so you have to be able to like be in charge of that. And also like with classes, and in my opinion calc 3 is like easier than calc 1 and 2. Like a lot of people think it's because calc 1 and calc 2 are like without classes, essentially like you have to pass them to get into your major, and once you get into your major, like they're like chilled down a little bit more. But like if you have credit for calc 1 and calc 2, I would say take it. But again, the advice is relative to who you are. But essentially, if you know calc before, if you know anything like of sort of calc in that manner, like just come in like you don't know anything. So like if you do decide to take any of those classes that you might have taken before, just come in like ready to learn and actually ready to tackle the exams. Because that's also something that I faced. Like also said, I also like I had a 5 in like calc 1. It like came in and like I was like, okay, I know this is gonna be an easy A. And I ended up with like a B plus in the class, which like doesn't seem bad, but like for someone that like coming in, I already assumed I was gonna get an A in the class, and I like did bad on the first exam. So I had to like catch up for the rest of the exam. So like come in, like even if you knew chem, even if you knew like whatever other classes like you might be taking, because most of FYA classes are like classes that you already took in high school, or at least for most people. Like not everyone has that privilege, but like most schools, like you are taking like some variation of the class, like physics. If you take physics in high school, they're pretty similar, similar to calc, similar to chemistry. So like if you come in, you have some type of background knowledge on it, but still like come in like you don't know anything, because the way Purdue will teach you will be like slightly similar from the way you learned it. So like it always help like just grinding it out and like taking every exam seriously, because those exams, like calc exams, only 12 questions. So to me, like everything counts essentially. Like you have to be very meticulous in like how you study and like how you approach every exam that you take.
That's good. That's good. Looking at this first slide, students, Purdue students, is there anything else we left out that you guys wanted to cover?
I'll be real quick, but I just wanted to say, like, kind of adding on to what Shay said, is that I always like to use the analogy, like your college experience, like you're driving a car, like to get your degree, right? And your advisor is like the guide rails on the side of the road to make sure that you don't like fall off the road all the way. You might fall off a little bit, but you'll be okay. And so like it's your responsibility to like make sure that your car is driving down the street straight and like following the laws of the road and stuff like that. So when you're going through your experience, like it's up to you to like make sure that you understand fully what you're supposed to be taking and when you're supposed to be taking it, and then your advisor is like a good place to have suggestions. So like if you know that you want to do something, you have to bring it to the attention of your advisor. You can't just assume that this person's going to be like, oh yeah, like you should do this or you should do that. You should say, hey, I looked at this, and bring a piece of paper, bring some notes or something, and talk them through that, and so that they can help you, set it up, put it on your MyPurdue plan or whatever needs to be done, so that you can take the classes that you want to take and like you could be successful through that. But you cannot expect an advisor to be like they're not going to be a hand holding essentially. So like you have to really put the time and effort into knowing what you're supposed to do while you're here, and then ultimately keep your car like driving. If you don't, then nobody else is going to put their foot on the gas for you. So
Great.
I'd like to back that up as the position from an advisor. That's exactly right. I'm here to guide you, to assist you in any way that I can. But like you said, you're the driver of your own car. It's your job to actually bring anything to my attention. I want to make sure that you're right on track for everything, and I'm there to assist you. But I'm not going to tell a student, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this, because it is your own education. I'm just there to give you my own suggestion based on my experience, what I've had with my other students.
All right, great. Vivek, go ahead and advance us forward. Are there any questions? Go ahead and put them in the chat, or you can ask. You can take yourself off mute and ask your question. And now we're moving to just a broad subject of knowing who you are and knowing what you want. So first of all, from this perspective of study habits, that's also kind of weaved in with the subject we just talked about when we talked about the transition from high school to college. So what was you guys experienced? You guys all did, the average GPA of students who are admitted to Purdue is 3.9. So all of you guys, have done extremely well in school. So we'd like to hear from those students who've had some experience with this and high school, how you studied in high school versus how you may have had to make some adjustments. What would you like to share?
So as a freshman, you might come into your freshman year and think that you don't have to study as much, considering like in high school you studied some, especially for like specific classes or if you're struggling, and that you might come in thinking like you don't have to study at all. But you kind of hit this realization that you actually really do need to study. And I mean, my transition wasn't too difficult. I studied a fair amount in high school, but when I came here, I studied even more. And you have to really learn to, self-discipline. Like, I need to sit down and study. I need to study for this amount of time. I need to study. You can't just study the night before. I mean, I've done that, but would not recommend. You should study much further out than just the night before.
Yes. Anyone else?
And also to go based off that, like I'm kind of opposite of like what Abigail did. Like in high school, like I didn't have to study as much. I like a lot of things came to me easily, like when it started in class, especially in high school, because like you learn the same topic for like almost like 3 days or a week. So like eventually they're just reinforcing the same information in your head, and like if you pay attention, you might be able to understand like easier. But in college, like you go to lecture, and like Purdue has great lecturers, but like some professors are from different countries, and some professors explain stuff differently than you would understand. So like you can go to a whole lecture and walk out and don't know one thing that they just said. Like, and it's not that you weren't paying attention, but like you might not just understand it. So like you have to understand, like when you don't understand stuff in class, it's up to you to like understand those things on your own time. And when the exam comes, it doesn't matter if they like said it in lecture at time, like it could be on the homework. it can be on the quizzes, it can be from like anything that have been covered throughout the duration of the class. It's fair game on the exam. So like you have to be able to go through everything and really have a deep, in-depth understanding of like whatever topic it is. Because in high school, like most of the exams are based on like whatever they said in class or like whatever like you're taught. But like in at least for most of Purdue classes, engineering classes related, like they're not just looking for you to understand the concepts, they're looking for you to be able to apply it. So like you might know how to do like derivatives in calc, but like how can you apply it to like actual like situations that happens that require like mathematical like approach. So like having to be able to like be confident in those concepts and knowing how to apply it is like a really good way to study. So like when you understand it, then try to apply it to like word problems and those different things. So like that will help you like when actually preparing for the exam, because that's how the exam usually are. They won't just ask you like directly, what's this?
That's great. Thanks for weaving us into the exams. Anyone want to share anything else about the exams? Because our exams pretty much the same as they were in high school.
I can talk a little bit about that. So like I think one of the big important things is like all of these things really kind of connect together. And so like what Shay said is like kind of important because like not that you won't like be able to understand the professor, but one of the things that you should think about is like how high school teachers maybe like walk through things three different ways, right? You know, like, oh, they see somebody's face is like crinkled up and they do it again and they do it a different way. And then they see somebody else's face is crinkled up, so they do it again. So now you have like all these different ways to kind of look at it, right? And some at one of those, hopefully you took in something, right? Professor's gonna lecture, you're gonna write whatever they write down, and then you have it's up to you to like kind of go back to the book and go back to the homework, go back to the quizzes and like understand how to connect the dots, right? Um, and so like that's the important part of like how your study habits work. And so like with the study habits, you have to understand like what you don't understand first, and then make sure that you're going through these things and you're going through and you're meticulously going through the material and like tying it to stuff. That's how you're going to study for the exam, right? You study, tie the homeworks back to the lecture, tie the quizzes back to the homeworks, back to the lecture, so that you have, you know, the resources prepared like a map for your exam. And most of the time, 7 times out of 10, I will say that usually you will find a correlation between all the work that's been done, and then the rest of the stuff will be more so like in-depth concepts of stuff that they maybe didn't go over directly in the lecture or in the homework or quiz. So I think that's important. But another big thing with exams is like that ties into this friends group thing. So like a lot of people like to study in groups, and like a lot of people like to do things with friends and all these other good things. And like I think that's great, and it's really good when you're doing your homework or studying for like a quiz or something that maybe is not important. But one of the things that I found out through my college career is that usually your friends are a distraction. So when it's time to like buckle down and you're trying to study in a friend group, you usually are going to be more distracted than productive. And so like a lot of people say, well, find a group and study with them, like, and it's not always that great, right? And so I think that that's one of the most important things that you have to understand is like how your friends are and how you learn, and to make sure that you are learning the most effective way possible when the time matters the most too. And so like before an exam, it's probably not the best time to be with your friends in the dorm and like some study nook thinking that you're going to get a bunch of stuff done before the exam, right? That's probably not going to happen. If you're doing homework and it's a little bit lenient deadline and you can get some help or whatever, then that's a little bit different. But when it's time like to perform, you don't want to make you also don't want to I think another good thing about friends, and the other panelists may be able to uh, agree with this. Sometimes when you're with friends, you think you know more than you actually know because somebody else knows something and they said it, and then like, oh yeah, I knew that, and you don't really know that. And so when you get to the exam, you're like, oh wait, I don't remember this, but you think that because you were in the friend group and y'all were able to kind of collectively solve a problem or something like that, that you understood what happened versus like when you sit down with the pencil and the paper and the problem in front of you and you realize like I don't know what's going on, and that gives you a moment where you can go back and really learn and commit it to memory versus like just seeing somebody else do it or seeing somebody else write it down because it's the same thing as lecture. um, and so you have to learn when that time is appropriate to actually have your friends or not have your friends or things like that. I think that's all kind of important. All this is really tied together, to be honest.
Right. Tied to all this is tapping into resources, and who and what should your support system be or include? So you guys go ahead and elaborate more about that because this is kind of important. Having a support system and tapping into resources and recognizing even folks you know that you could have a person that's your friend that maybe not be a good person to study with, but then there may be other individuals who are excellent people to study with because they're not your friends. Don't know. So what do you guys have to say about that?
So something that I found is that Purdue actually has like a ton of resources when it comes to academics. Um, I think Jeff said it earlier. MEP has like a tutoring services. There's plenty of tutoring services. There's also these things called supplemental instruction. And that's just, again, like another kind of office hour kind of thing where you can get additional instruction and help with your homework, even exam prep as well. Um, I know for me, sometimes this transition was hard for me just because for me personally, I sometimes find it hard to ask for help and let other people help me sometimes. But sometimes you have to like break that wall down like internally and realize that it's okay to ask for help and that you need it. And then I found like a lot of my friends are in similar classes to me, and we tend to do like we have group chats for homework, but when it comes down to like exams, we all kind of disperse and study on our own just because we all find it easier to study by yourselves, and that's when we know that it's time to like be serious. Also, your friend should be in your support system. They don't necessarily need to be in like your major or the same classes, but they should definitely like not be a distraction. Like they should also know when to get serious and when to, leave you alone to let you have your alone time so you can actually like study and get work done.
Exactly.
I was
Great.
gonna say
Go
one of the
ahead.
most important things that I did when I was a freshman. So contrary to most of my engineering friends, so obviously like as an engineer, I have a lot of engineering friends. As a freshman, I did not have a lot of engineering friends. And so like one of the best things that you can do, engineering's hard, right? And one of the best things that I did for myself throughout my time at Purdue is I have a bunch of non-engineering friends. I have engineering friends and I have non-engineering friends. And when I'm just over engineering, I have somewhere else I can go where I don't have to think about engineering. Because like you're gonna be around a bunch of people that are just like you all the time doing the same work, stressed out like you, things like that. It's not gonna be advantageous for your like own personal mental health type of thing. So like me being able to break away from that and like go hang out with other groups of friends is very beneficial. And I something that I totally 100% recommend that you invest into is like having two support groups, like academic support group, which is obviously like you're going to be your engineering friends, and then like just a social support group or like whatever that looks like. Some people that don't know what's going on in your academic life that you can just hang out with and like that are your friends.
That's great. This moves us on to the subject of work-life balance. And someone said something about Jenga. So what do you guys want to stress? What have you learned during your college experience that you want to share?
I'll go first for this. Kind of like tying back to like what Russell finished with, like trying to find a balance between just engineering and like stuff outside of engineering, because at the end of the day we are in college. College is about the experience and not just like the education that you get. Because honestly, when you finish college, what I see is you won't remember a lot of like those exams or a lot of like those sleepless nights, but you remember a lot of the memories you made. So like trying to balance, like, of course, getting a good GPA and still being able to get like an awesome college experience is very important. So having like those friends outside of engineering and those like involvements in engineering, for example, like I'm part of ASA, which is African Student Association, and essentially like it's kind of like my getaway from like engineering stuff. Like we have like the different events for like end of the year stuff and like movie nights and stuff like that, to where like I can just really like get away from like the math, the science, the like schoolwork, and just like socialize with people and just have fun around people that I'm comfortable with, like stuff like that. So like trying to find like a group for you, and Purdue has so much organizations. Like if you like chess, if you like some stuff that you won't even think exist before this, Purdue has organizations for them. Like you'll be surprised. Like if you've taken a tour in like Purdue, there's like croc lounge, people will be doing like night fighting, like there's so much different things that you won't even know that you'll be exposed to, that if you have an interest in it, you can find like other people as well that like have those interests, and it doesn't have to be technical based. And like, of course, there's some people that like enjoy like technical stuff, even when there is not like school required. There's also stuff like that, like ASME and like NSB and stuff like that. Like there's so much different varieties that you have to be able to find a balance for what works for you, to where it's not just you're not just like strictly academics. Because at the end of the day, you find out like your senior year, looking back like your junior year, you'll realize other people having all these good experiences and all these good opportunities, and then you realize like all you have going on is academics, and it's not terrible, but like it's great having all those other aspects to it, to where it's like sometimes if you fail an exam, you have an escape to like talk to, or like you have an escape to like do, or other things to like really get your mind off of it, instead of like getting depressed when something bad happened with school and just like wallowing in it and not having an escape for that. So that's my perspective on that.
Um, I, I would just say I brought up the whole thing about work life Jenga instead of like balance, and it's like because like one of the big things that so I'm graduating, I have a full time job like lined up, and like I've had internships and I've done all these things, and like one of the things that I've like learned throughout my time is that like there is a balance, like you take each piece out, and like a piece you take a piece out in this negotiation and you put it back on the top, and like every time you take something out you're putting it back on the top and it'll come back to you. So like when you are balancing yourself, so like say you take out, okay, I'm not going to do this, and you put it back on the top, and you replace it with something else. Eventually, like you'll catch up to that, and like that'll be helpful in the future. So like for me, like when I started making sacrifices for like academics and started training a little bit more to like making sure I had leadership experience, that paid like long dividends in my like like my career. And so like one of the big things like that I pretty much have learned is that you know your GPA will fluctuate a little bit, but like the things that you are able to put on your resume and like make your life beneficial, like beyond Purdue, is really important. So like you won't get, like I don't want to say you won't get, but it's gonna be a lot harder to separate yourself from like all the other great Purdue students if you don't have like all these like I don't want to say all these things, but you have to have stuff. Like you have to be able to talk about the things that you've been doing while you've been at Purdue that it's not classes, because they know you're here for classes. They know what classes you're taking, like the recruiters and things like that. They know this. So like when you're trying to set yourself apart, saying, "Oh, I took calc, I taken calc two, this, that, blah, blah, blah," and you're gonna everybody else took that too. So then what? Then what? So like you have to really be um, mindful of those things and how you're going to really set yourself apart from that. And that's where the Jenga part comes in. Like you really have to be able to, take some pieces out, put some pieces on top, look at it, reevaluate, stop breathing for a second so that the thing doesn't fall down. And like there's gonna be some moments of reflection. And then if your tower does fall down, you have to figure out how to put it back together and start all over again, right? But when your tower falls down, you have all these pieces. Like the same pieces are being making it back up. So you just have to figure out what's the most strategic way to start pulling things again and putting things back on top. So I don't think that there's one right answer. Obviously, there's no right answer like to how you do your experience, but just be mindful of what you're doing, because there's right circles to be in and right groups. Like a lot of like having internship experience, like doing co-ops or doing something abroad. Like there's good circles to be in, and if you're not in those circles, like the Venn diagram, the center is probably not going to be what you want it to be at the end of the day. So
That's great. So any other comments? Well, we are winding down, and we want to thank our speakers. We want to thank Jeff Myers, Senior Academic Advisor over in First Year Engineering, and our four Purdue students. We'd like for you, the audience, to go into the chat and give us some feedback about this session. Give us some feedback. What did you think about this? What was good? What was beneficial? What was not beneficial? Or, we just want to know, because we always want to make this better. We want to make sure if there's any questions that you have, feel free to ask right at this time. There'll be other sessions. We have a session on Monday on the exploratory path. So if you know someone who may have not been admitted to first year engineering, but they've been offered at exploratory, and Some people almost throw their hands up in a case like that. Now, before we leave, I think we have students. Do we have students who've done honors? Is there anyone, Purdue students who've done honors?
Me.
Okay.
Mhm.
Anyone else? Okay. Would you just share a little bit about your honors experience, or just some things in general that they might want to know?
So I have like I don't want to say I have a bad experience, but I did not have a great experience in honors. So I actually did not finish my I could have finished, but I didn't want to. I kind of that was one of those Jenga moments in my life where I had to figure out what was going to be most important for me. And so I didn't take 162. I only took 161, and then I switched over to 132 my second semester. I got this. I mean, I'm here now, but I would say like one of the big things about honors is that if you can do it, it provides a lot of like in-depth learning and experiences for you, especially if you want to go into more like a research type of role, or like you want to do something more like where you're going to get your master's, get your PhD, things like that. Like those things, like honors will be beneficial for you. I will say, in my opinion, because I've been fairly successful, even my second, like my first, I had an internship after my freshman year. Um, there's no big difference in like having honors on your resume than not having honors on your resume. So do not get caught up in that. Please don't get caught up in that, because that's how a lot of people get messed up, to be honest with you. Honors is a lot more difficult. Like that is a real thing. Um, so I would just say like, please be real with yourself, and also know that um you okay, so there's another thing that I want to say. If you get accepted into the honors program now, well, not, it wasn't like this when I was a freshman, but now you do not have to take the honors engineering courses. So if you do want to be in the honors program and do like the scholarly research and things like that, because the honors college has a lot of curriculum that will help you like with that stuff, you do not have to take the honors engineering classes. So you can still do the regular curriculum. Before we had to take the honors engineering classes, we don't you don't have to do that anymore. And so I would recommend, if you do want to do honors, evaluate its engineering honors. That's going to help you, because that is something that is a lot more difficult. It's a lot more time consuming, and it's more credits too. So it's 4 credits hours both semesters versus 2 credits for engineering, 131, 132. However, you do get the physics credit if you pass both of them. If you don't, then you're still on the hook for the physics credit. So, and they're only offered once. They're only offered fall, spring. So, like, say you don't pass the one in the fall, then you're gonna be on the hook for taking 131 in the spring, 132 in the fall. You're gonna be late for T2M, and then you're still gonna have that D on your transcript, and you won't be able to retake it till the fall. So, do be mindful of that. With the other classes, they're usually, I think, and Jeffrey, you can maybe say, but I'm pretty sure all the FYE classes are offered fall, spring. So if you mess up one semester, you still have the opportunity to retake it the next semester. But honors is not that way. So if you mess up one semester, so I have friends, to be honest with you, I have friends who were in honors with me. We are graduating this semester. They still have the D from freshman year on their transcript. They never. It's just too much to go back and retake it. So if you mess up, you just have to once again like pick yourself up and kind of continue with the path that you're taking. So just be mindful of those things.
Thank you so much. Well, I thought it was a great discussion tonight. I hope you did too. It looks like most of you did. We'll look forward to seeing you next Monday and Tuesday. You guys have a great evening. And
Oh wait, somebody asked a question
oh,
about when do you choose your FYE path? That's the second semester.
okay.
If but you can also, like I said about the what I just said, if you don't make it, you do have a chance to do it in the summer or the fall. So like you can like there's opportunities to do it throughout the rolling throughout the year, but the most time when all freshmen do it is at the end of the spring semester, or the very beginning of the spring semester. You'll transfer out at the end of your second semester.
Okay, that's excellent. So if you have further questions, go ahead and stay behind, and I'm sure there'll be someone that will be able to help you. So everyone have a good night, and if you have anything else you comment, or you just want to talk to someone, because these are some pretty neat people, you might just want to say hello and get to know them a little bit better. So have a good night, and thanks again. Thanks, Jeff. And feel free to stay because there may be an advisor question.